What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. I'm C.
I'm P.
And today we're going to be reacting to part 2 of Jordan Peterson's best comebacks against opponents. We did part 1 last time. Part 2 should be airing soon. But yeah, you guys like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro's arguments and things like that. So we're going to do more of this for you guys. Yeah.
As always, let us know what you think about this video in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ring that bell so you can get notified for our upcoming videos. Go ahead.
Let's begin.
I thought we were talking about masculinity.
We are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
How are we talking about masculinity?
Because I'm asking you what you think of men and of women. Isn't
No,
that...
basically what you've been trying to do, I would say for the last 15 minutes, is put me into a sequence of corners by accusing me of various forms of misbehavior.
Do you think a trans woman is a real woman?
Jordan Peterson.
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. You know, I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well,
She
I'm
doesn't-
asking you, in your mind, you know, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
No,
Why not?
because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think that people should be treated with respect and dignity if they happen not to fit easily into a gender category. That's a different issue.
Right.
But it's a matter of definition, and I actually think it's a foolish argument in some sense, because what do you mean by real?
Well, I mean, you've just clarified that, though. You don't think
my God, it's
that
a
a
tough
trans
question.
woman is a woman, and do you think that
I
that...
think that's a trap question because, like Jordan Peterson said, the definition nowadays has changed. So if you just go by the biological markers, people are gonna call you a bigot for like saying that a transgender is not a real woman. I think nowadays you gotta ask, define real. You know what I mean? Someone asked that question. You gotta say define what a real woman is. I think also it's nowadays it's subjective what a real woman is. So that question is really a tough question.
Clarified that, though. You don't think that a trans woman is a woman, and do you think that that is what is behind or explains your opposition to this idea of a law mandating you to use a preferred pronoun, is because you don't actually believe that that's the truth, that a trans woman is a woman, and therefore you can't use that pronoun?
No, that's not my argument at
Really?
all. Yeah, really. My
Yeah,
argument is that the
no, I know what
government
your
shouldn't
argument
compel
is.
voluntary speech.
No, but I know what your argument is, and
No,
you've
but
made
that's
it very
really
clearly.
it. No, but that's exactly it.
But
There's
the
no behind.
motivation
There's
behind
no motivation behind it.
But you don't believe
I
a
wouldn't
trans
put
woman is a woman.
everything on my online in my life to take the stance I did unless I had thought that through very deeply. And I've thought it through very deeply. There aren't hidden motivations that have to do with some arbitrary prejudice against trans people.
Okay.
It's pure and simply this. There's never been a time in English common law history where the government compelled speech, and the Canadian government dared to do that. And that was unacceptable. And they masked it with this show of compassion for the oppressed, and I don't buy it. Marxists say, well, that wasn't real Marxism. What it really means, and I've thought about this for a long time, it's the most arrogant possible statement anyone could ever make. It means, if I would have been in Stalin's position, I would have ushered in the damn utopia instead of the genocidal massacres, because I understand the doctrine of Marxism and everything about me is good. It's like, well, think again, sunshine. You don't understand it. You don't understand it. And you're not that good. And if the power was in your hands, assuming you had the competence, which you don't, you wouldn't have done any better. And even if you had, there would have been someone else waiting right behind you to shoot you the first time you actually tried to do anything good. And that's what happened to all the old guard who ran the damn revolution. Stalin rounded them all up and shot them, along with their families and millions of other people. So even if you do happen to be that avatar of moral purity that you claim implicitly, the probability that you'd get to act out your goodness in relationship to those possessed by your ideology is zero.
I think that goes well with Jordan says that if you were alive in the Holocaust, if you lived in Germany, if you were a German in the Holocaust, you probably would have been a soldier for Hitler. Because we all think if we were there, we would be like the people trying to help the Jews and stuff. I get that, but he said that it probably would have been a god, because we overestimate how good we are in hard decisions, because we ourselves haven't faced those hardships, or have faced like a government making us do something, right? So we think that no, we will have stood up against the government and do this and do that, but it's like most people probably wouldn't have. They probably would have been a god.
There's also like a different side to each story. Like for some reason, I'm thinking of the new Cruella movie that just came out. They show you Cruella's side. Yes, she was an evil person, but how did she get to be that evil person? And in her eyes, she wasn't an evil person at all. But in other people's eyes, she was. So it really is other people's perspective, and you won't really know until you're in that person's shoes if they were truly bad per se. Because to them, they weren't doing anything wrong. But to you, watching them, they were doing something wrong. So you don't know if you were in their shoes, would you be doing the same thing because you thought that what you're doing is not wrong, or would you be doing quote unquote the good thing?
Exactly, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the guys thought they were doing the right thing. So how do you know, if you have lived in that society, if you grew up there, that you wouldn't think that you were doing the right thing? You know what I mean?
Those are the sorts of problems that trans people face every day, being out of housing, being considered, considering suicide. These are really big problems.
My refusal to use pronouns because left-wing activists want me to use them has nothing to do with whether or not trans people are having difficulties in society. And I'd also like to point out that I've had many letters of support.
Problem, isn't it?
I've had many letters of support from trans people, and they tell me that the trans activists don't support them, and most trans people
Jordan,
actually wanted to be referred to as he or she.
Doesn't mean
they
that
weren't
you
my
are
friends.
Untransphobic.
They
just
weren't
because
my
you
friends.
know a few people, just because you've talked
I
to a
didn't
few
know
trans
them.
people, you don't know the trans community like the trans community does. You've got no idea what it's like to be trans.
Professor Pete, Professor Pete, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's let Professor Peterson finish his thought, please.
All right. So, the trans activists aren't proper representatives of the trans community because they haven't been elected by the trans community.
Nobody elected you either, Jordan.
I'm not speaking for anyone except myself, and on behalf of other people, perhaps who want to maintain the right to free speech. I'm not claiming that I'm a representative of white people or white men or any other group. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and so I'm not taking.
But Professor Peterson, let me jump in there, though, because we have seen an evolution of language. There are words that we don't use anymore.
Not by legislation.
Well, legislation or not, there are words that have evolved. We don't use, for example, I'm Asian. I would bristle if someone called me Oriental. That is an evolution of how we use words. How is this different, whether legislated or not?
I understand
I understand legislatively, but if at the heart of it is to allow a student to study free of what they feel is discrimination, why not help that along?
I already made.
Because the government has a history of not, doing it the right way. So if you let it happen naturally, what I'm saying, that would be a way better alternative than to actually
just like everything else happened naturally.
Exactly. So
like
instead of forcing people to do something,
it will happen. And it does happen. It goes back to saying, like, if somebody comes up, if you say he and somebody corrects you, and then you say, oh, I'm sorry, and then you dress them how they want to be addressed, that's coming naturally. But if you force people saying, from now on, there is no he and she, you have to address them as this.
People are going to be like, no, I ain't saying that.
Like, you're causing more conflict than you're solving.
Exactly. You're causing more conflict than necessary by trying to force them to do it.
Like, it's going to happen naturally. It already is. Because people are getting corrected by the people that feel some type of way about it. It's because of the small amount of people that don't want to correct people because they're afraid to, or whatever the case may be, that then go online and cry about it.
Or they yell at them too.
Or they just start screaming and fighting with the person instead of just being like, no, that's not correct. I would like to be referred to as this. Because of that, that's causing the whole debate in the society now where people are like, well, what do we do to stop this fighting and to stop these people from committing suicide or feeling oppressed or whatever the case may be? The only way to stop that is by teaching tolerance and letting people do it naturally. Don't force people.
That's never worked in history.
It's
to
never
force
worked.
people. It's never worked.
Made my case for why not help that along. I believe that this legislation is extraordinarily dangerous, and there's other elements of it too that we haven't even got to in our society yet, like the protection for gender expression. And I've looked at gender expression in the Ontario Human Rights Code, and as far as I can tell, gender expression is best summarized in a single word: fashion.
When people talk,
That's true because people are not, and I watched some TikToks. I think we did a reaction to it, right? Where the girl was like, "Today I might be a gender, but tomorrow I might be another one." She even said it by the hour. Today I might be this, but the next hour I might be something else. Like you said, it's fashion.
Talk about common ground, it's got to be founded on some kind of truth. And when we have feminists saying, I don't believe in the biological differences between men and women, well, that's why it's controversial. Where do you go from there? That's why it's controversial to say what you're saying, and it's controversial to say, hold on a second, maybe a girl on testosterone therapy winning high school wrestling meets is a problem. That's controversial.
Yeah, maybe that's a bad idea. It's just possible that that's not a very good idea. You know, I mean, it's hard to imagine that could be the case. But, well, in this idea that I don't believe in the biological differences between men and women, it's like, well, what do you mean by believe? Exactly. It's like you act out your belief. You know, I mean, what the hell does that mean? And what do you mean? See, what do you mean by belief? What do you mean by biology? And what do you mean by gender? Like, as soon as you put those three concepts together in a sentence that says, I don't believe in the biological difference between the genders, you throw the meaning of all three of those words up into the air so far that no one can tell what you're talking about, including you.
Yeah, and that's the goal, though, I think, a lot of the time. I think it's
Oh, definitely. The goal, part of the goal is an all-out assault on the categorical structure.
The Ministry of Women's Affairs in New Zealand and the Minister of Women's Affairs, or the Minister for Women as she's known, suggested recently that there were too many white old men on boards in New Zealand of private and public companies.
Oh my God, this kind of generalization, like, if you're white and you're like rich, it must be because you have like kept people down, or you use your whiteness to get ahead. It's like, I don't like this kind of generalizations. Instead of just saying, how did you get up here? You know, you're saying, oh, this is how people got up here. It's like,
I'm
those
so
generalizations
sick of
are like
hearing
stupid.
like how every old white man who's rich is a problem, or every old white man in general is a problem.
Exactly.
Like,
It's like,
I'm so sick of it.
some of
like,
them are, but not most of them. I doubt it's most of them.
It's not every old white man, okay? Like this.
And just suggested that they needed to move aside so private and public companies, and just suggested that they needed to move aside so there could be more diversity. Your response to that suggestion?
Well, what's her racial and ethnic background, just out of curiosity?
I think she's born in America, Julianne Genter. She's a member of our Green Party here.
Is she white?
Yes.
Well, maybe it's time for her to bloody well move aside and let someone who isn't white have her position.
That's facts, because that's what you I guess campaigning for, right? Like if you white, let somebody of like a racial background get your position. Why don't you start? How about you get somebody who's less, who's a different race or whatever, take your position for diversity's sake. You know what I mean? But no, you only want to go after these people who have power on top. Why don't you start doing that?
Or how about you actually have schools teach the actual fundamentals about how to be a good business person, how to be a good
Facts.
CEO, and that way you could have more people of different races and more women in those seats because they actually know what the fuck they're doing instead of selected old white people. Like,
Facts. See. Has that ever worked? They're just annoying.
That's pure narcissism at work, by the way.
what are you doing? so confused.
They are idiots. Sorry, being idiots.
You know, to hijack an event like this that other people put time and effort into, and to use their civility of the crowd and the civility of the organizers as an excuse to blatantly yell out your ill-informed opinions is no way to conduct a civil dialogue. It's absolutely appalling. The people who do that should be embarrassed.
I swear, if they knew that the people, the audience or the people that was on the stage was gonna actually, you know, attack them, trying to, you know, kick them out, forcibly kick them out, they wouldn't do it. It's because they know the people is not gonna try to forcibly kick them out. That's why they do it.
Or sometimes they even do it knowing that because they want the attention.
That's
Because
true.
if people do forcibly kick them out
Then
and
they
give them that attention, it'll be on the news, it will be this, and then they'll be even more
Then they
vocal.
be like,
And they'll be like, I was just trying to speak my mind, and then they forced me off the stage.
I'm a woman! Oh my god!
I'm just a white woman, this is not okay.
Okay, Suzu.
I mean, and I've spoken with no shortage of trans people, and, you know, my proclivity has been, without exception so far, to address them in the manner that seems most socially appropriate under the circumstances. Now, you asked a specific question, which was, do I have special expertise that I might share with other people?
You're doing Martin Luther, and I think that these issues are a little subtler than those. And so,
well,
I'm
what
just
makes
waiting.
you what makes you think that you're doing the kids that are grandstanding any favors by going along with their
Because
manipulation?
I can't decide which ones those are.
Well,
I just
then-
have my gut instincts, and that's not good enough.
Look, fair enough, but you have a type 1 and type 2 error problem. So one error is that you don't call students what they deserve to be called. That's one error. And the other error is that you call students what they want to be called even though they don't deserve it. And so what you're trying to do optimally is to minimize both those errors. And to do that, you have to take a middle route. Now, what you've decided to do, and I'm not criticizing it, is you've decided to allow for the possibility 100% of one of those errors because you think it's a less significant error. And, you know, you might be right, but it's not like you're acting in an error-free manner. You've just decided to minimize one form of error at the expense of the other. Because I would say you're allowing, what would you call it, attention-seeking and somewhat narcissistic undergraduates to gain the upper hand over you in your class.
You said that the problem.
Yo, the way he explained things, or like, it's so good that you're able to understand it. It's amazing.
The problem was those angry women.
Graduates to gain the upper hand over you in your class.
You said that the problem with those angry women is that since at the end of the argument you cannot fight physically, you can't really deal with them.
That's not what I said. I said that that's one of the things that keeps conversation between men civil. Women can't argue with angry women. Women are often bullied by angry women.
What I meant was more, you said that, and I'm really like not trying to paraphrase you or, you know, to put words into your mouth.
You are trying that directly.
No, it is things that you said that you cannot deal with those
yes, but don't tell me
crazy
that you're not
sisters
trying to
because
put
they're
words into my
hysterical
mouth
and
because
all
you've
this.
selected what you're going to ask, and you selected it very carefully with a tremendous amount of forethought.
Well,
and there's a purpose for that. What is the purpose precisely?
I am quoting things that you said.
Why? What is it that you're trying to establish?
Because you said them.
I thought we were talking about masculinity.
We are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
How are we talking about masculinity?
Because I'm asking you what you think of men and of women.
Basically what you've been trying to do, I would say, for the last 15 minutes is put me into a sequence of corners by accusing me of various forms of misbehavior. So why are we doing that? What's the point here?
These are things that you said. My job as a journalist is to ask questions about what you represent and the ideas that you defend.
Your job is also to select the things that you might ask about in some manner that doesn't indicate a substantive bias. You picked 3 things to talk to me about in the last 20 minutes that were very carefully selected. Like, why did you pick those things?
Because this is my job.
No, not necessarily. You could be asking me, for example, why I've spoken to 250,000 people live in the last 8 months. That might be more newsworthy.
Well, we're not going to have a big debate about journalism, but if a journalist doesn't ask the tough questions, how can you give the good answers?
Well, it depends on what the tough questions are. It depends on
I didn't think that they would be tough. We're talking about things that you said. I mean, if it's easier to have conversation between men, because there is this underlying threat, you know, of a physical contact.
I don't think it's easier. It tends to be somewhat more civil.
Pronoun.
I think it's good that he actually when he thinks something is like wrong with what's going on, he actually stand up for himself and I just
Defends himself.
Exactly. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people would just let that happen, just let it slide. You know what I mean? And I think for the reporters, if you are like wanna appear to be on the side of the LGBT or the side of women or whatever, you will ask biased questions. So people can say, "Oh, he's for us." You know what I mean? You wanna appear to be on their side by asking biased questions or by trying to trap him into certain things. You know what I mean? So he was saying that he was doing it on purpose.
Never mind, I forgot what I was going to say.
Civil.
Pronoun misuse may become actionable through the human rights tribunals and the courts. And the remedies? Monetary damages, non-financial remedies, for example, ceasing the discriminatory practice or reinstatement to the job, and public interest remedies, for example, changing hiring practices or developing non-discriminatory policies and procedures.
That's crazy.
Jail time is not one of them. Jordan, you're not going to go to jail if you keep this up. Do you find that reassuring?
What if I don't pay the fine?
Then what? Can someone please explain to Jordan?
Like, you still gotta pay. Like I said, if you don't pay the fine, what's gonna happen? If you don't pay a government fine, ultimately you go to jail, right? Is that what you're trying to make?
B. Peterson, that there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom from consequence. Do you agree there's a difference?
Well, certainly there's a difference.
And are you prepared to suffer the consequences that society may deem you need to suffer because of your views?
Yes, I'm prepared to do that.
What does that entail?
Are you open to learning?
Well, hang on.
That's not the question.
Hang on, that wasn't the question.
It's
That's
true.
right.
Well, so what am I willing to do? Well, I think that the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal is probably obligated by their own tangled web to bring me in front of it. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this. And that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. Now, if our society comes to some sort of consensus over the next while about how we'll solve the pronoun problem, let's call it, and that becomes part of popular parlance, and it seems to solve the problem properly without sacrificing the distinction between singular and plural, and without requiring me to memorize an impossible list of an indefinite number of pronouns, then I would be willing to reconsider my position. But I'm also partly opposed to this because it's been made mandatory and has the whole weight of the law behind it. It's like, this is a very bad idea. I believe this is a very bad idea. And I believe that the reason this has caused so much noise, tremendous amount of noise, tremendous amount of attention on YouTube, is because there are things that are at stake in this discussion, despite its surface nature, that strike at the very heart of our civilization.
I want to say that there are so many different pronouns. It's like, how are you supposed to keep up with them? If people can just create them when they feel like it, it's like there's an infinite possibilities of pronouns. It's like, it's not, what was it? It's not like legislative. It's not, there's not like an official pronoun thing that exists. You know what I mean?
It reminds me of little kids. I was watching a TikTok and the mom was like cracking up. She's like, I went to the mall with my daughter and she's learning how to speak. And she can't say purses, so she keeps saying pussies. So that's what it reminds me of. It's like kids that can't fully speak or know what to say or what to call themselves, so they're just making up words as they go along. Like, and that's fine and dandy. Like, for example, if a child comes to you and they're like, oh, I have an imaginary friend named Pussycat, okay, you're gonna play along, but they're not demanding you to play along. They're saying it and you're playing along with them or doing what they requested. It becomes a difference between like doing something out of respect versus doing something out of force.
Mm-hmm. And also the kids, so you're more likely to go along with it because you think, oh, they all know better, right? But
Yeah.
You guys are, like, people are adults.
But I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah,
like
I understand.
You'll go along with it because this is what the kid wants. It's the same thing for adults. If this is what you want out of respect, you'll abide by them. But it's different when somebody is forcing you.
When you use force, people rebel. That's the gist of it.
It's instinct.
Question for Professor Peterson. Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their freedom of speech?
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that.
As you might imagine, you've been a topic of conversation on this campus a lot in the past week or so, certainly among a lot of us who discuss politics. And one of the things that sort of united people who like and dislike a lot of your ideas is that we appreciate your defense of free speech, and we appreciate you coming here to talk about it with us. But one of the things I thought was really interesting is Professor Van Dyke addressed the distinction between you and Jonathan Haidt. And you mentioned this as sort of a temperamental one. And I think, I'm sure that's true to some extent, but I noticed you've made a lot of more sort of substantively inflammatory claims. Like in the course of this lecture, you called the authors of Facebook posts demons and totalitarians. In past events, you've called them things like neo-Marxists, cultural Marxists. You've called them, I believe, a fifth column that is committing treason against the West. And it seems to me this is more than temperamental. This is a substantive difference. And
It's
another,
a substantive
yes.
difference,
And,
yes.
and another thing you've done is that, unlike Haidt, you have a more sort of comprehensive political program. You've talked a lot in defense of traditional hierarchies, both of gender, of class, so on, though emphatically not of race. And so it seems that...
I haven't talked about defense of traditional hierarchies in terms of gender and class. That's not true.
Well, you've talked about hierarchies in society. You've talked
Yeah,
about...
that's
yes.
true. I have done
would you
that.
not define
But I
that as
haven't
class?
justified them on the basis of gender and class. Whatever it
well,
the
okay,
two
but
categories.
you talk
Not
about,
okay. That's an important
yes.
distinction.
Okay, but you defend hierarchies in society in a way that... You talk a lot about the Pareto distribution, yes?
That doesn't mean I
Yeah.
defend it.
Well, okay.
No, not well,
yes.
okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think you talk
Observing that something exists is
Yes.
not the same as defending it. How in the world...
Well, people attack it, right?
What's that?
And you don't. People attack it.
Attack
as
what?
inherently attack the hierarchies of society as inherently unjust, right?
Well, they're unjust, but
Yes.
they're also useful.
Okay, so you say they're useful. Some
Well,
people would disagree
look at
with
it
that
this way.
proposition.
Okay, look at it this way. You obviously think that it's worthwhile to stand up and ask a question.
Yes.
So you think that standing up and asking a question is better than
Yes.
not standing up and asking a question.
Yes.
Okay, that's a hierarchy
Yes.
of values.
Yes.
Okay, without the hierarchy of values, you couldn't act.
Of course.
No, not of course.
Well, wait.
It's
do you-
partly why
I
I'm
think
defending
there's a
the
distinction
hierarchy.
here.
Without
no
a hierarchy,
one disagrees
there's
about
no
the
impetus
facts
to
of
act.
the hierarchy, right?
What's that?
There is a hierarchy in society, right?
No, there's multiple hierarchies
Okay, there are
in
multiple
society.
hierarchies in society, right?
Yes.
And you say that they are based in, you invoke the lobster, right? That they are based in nature.
I
Yes.
said that they were inevitable.
Yes,
Yes,
that they were inevitable. Some
right.
people
That
disagree
doesn't
with
mean that they're
but,
good.
But my point is that this is generally relevant to it. You have a broader point than free speech. This is one of the things you talk about. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Whereas I think there are some other activists who focus on more exclusively
I'm not
on
an
free
activist.
speech.
I would say that anybody with more than a cursory knowledge of 20th century history who dares to claim simultaneously that they have compassion for the downtrodden and that they're Marxists are revealing either an ignorance of history that's so astounding that it's actually a form of miracle, or a kind of malevolence that's so reprehensible that it's almost unspeakable. Because we already ran the equity experiment over the course of the 20th century, and we already know what the Marxist doctrines have done for oppressed people all around the world, and the answer to that mostly was imprison them, enslave them, work them to death, or execute them. And as far as I can tell, that's not precisely commensurate with any message of compassion. Sorry, tried that, didn't work. We got 100 million corpses to prove it, and that's plenty for me. And if it's not enough for you, well then you should do some serious thinking, either about your historical knowledge or about your moral character. Need a question.
How's the saying go? If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. Is that how it is?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're saying like, you know, you look at the historical, you know, facts about what happened when this ideologies has been put into effect, and they've never ended well. That's what I'm saying, you know. I think nowadays kids are growing up, they learn about an ideology, they think, oh, this sounds that good, you know, it sounds that's going to do what a better place, right? And of course you can think it sounds good, but if you look at in the past when they've been implemented, it never ended well. So I think, you know, just kids these days who are growing up need to learn about history and what the ideologies have, I guess.
True history, because even schools kind of sugarcoat that.
Yeah, exactly. Continue.
Yes. Okay.
I mean,
My
like I
question
said,
is,
you're doing fine,
do you
but
think-
knowledge about your moral character. Need a question.
Yes. Okay.
I mean,
My
like I
question
said,
is,
you're doing
do
fine,
you
but
think-
it's just too
Yes.
much. Like, I can't keep it
Do
straight.
you think that your behavior risks politicizing it, and do you think that politicization is justified?
I think my behavior risks politicizing it, yes. I would rather it not be politicized. And I'm doing what I can to manage that risk. However, it's become political in my country because the government implemented compelled speech legislation. So I wasn't complaining about that before it became political. Now, and there is a time, even when you're detached in some sense from the political realm, that you can't be detached anymore. Well, I'm not happy with the fact that this has become politicized. You could say that I haven't done a stellar job in ensuring in every possible manner that this has remained neutrally apolitical. Probably true, you know, but I'm not particularly unhappy with the way things have gone so far. So, and I'm not happy with the radical left. And so if they're irritated at me, so much the better, as far as I'm concerned. So have I conducted myself perfectly? It's like, undoubtedly no. So I've got more than my fair share of faults, and a temper is one of them. But I'm muddling through.
I think he does really well at controlling his temper, because when I watch these interviews, there are things that happens, and if that was me, I'll be like, that's not what I said, you know what I mean?
That reminds me of what I was going to say before, when you were saying how a lot of people don't talk back to the reporters and defend themselves. And I think it's because not a lot of people like Jordan Peterson can not articulate it in a way where they're not about to punch the person.
Angry, exactly.
So a lot of times they just sit there and bite their tongue and let the person say whatever they want to say, because they know that if they say something, they're going to get in even bigger trouble because they rashed out on TV or whatever the case. And he does an excellent way of defending himself in a way where he's not digging a big hole for himself. You know
he does
what I
it
mean?
in a calmly manner,
yes.
which most of us will be screaming.
I would say semi-calm way, because he has his moments where he's like, no.
Yeah, but he doesn't really give he doesn't exaggerate.
Yes.
He's like, no, it's like he's doing it seriously, not like in a yelling way.
Yes.
Like, no, that's not what I said. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's not what I said. You know, there's a difference between that. You know. Let's continue.
But through the teeth, you could tell
exactly.
He's
really angry.
Like, no, that's not what I said.
But he does a good job, I think, to keep himself
composed
and civilized.
Mm-hmm. Look at him.
Look at it this way. All right. Women are much more likely to try to commit suicide. And men are much more likely to kill themselves. And the reason for that is that men use lethal force and women don't. Now that's a big difference. Okay, so then you say, well, women manifest aggression towards themselves and to others, but they don't use lethal force. They don't use physical force the same way men do. So they have to do it some other way.
Why do
what
they
are the
have
other
to
ways?
do something some other way? That, you
Because
can take
people
your
are
Hobbesian
aggressive.
war against, so you're basically a Hobbesian. Life is
No,
a
I'm
war of
half
all
and
against
half,
all.
half and half. Half Hobbes, half Rousseau. That's why I'm not an ideologue. Because I don't think that people are good or evil. I think they're both. I don't think that culture is security or tyranny. I think it's both. And I don't think that nature is benevolence or catastrophe. I think it's both. And that's why I'm not an ideologue.
Well, it's not an essentially bad idea.
It's a terrible
to challenge the tyranny of the patriarchy and the West.
It is an absolutely terrible idea when you assume that the fundamental reality of the West is patriarchal tyranny. It's like, compared to what exactly? Our societies are more free and more productive than any other societies in the world and than any other societies that have ever existed. Now, that doesn't mean they're without their faults.
No, but if you look and you say, look at the facts, and you look at who's in power...
And who is in power exactly? And what exactly do you mean by that? Let's say men.
Political power. Mainly men.
It depends on the domain. It's certainly not the case in anything that has to do with the provision of health. It's not the case in education.
No, but say political power.
At the very upper echelons,
yes,
at the very upper echelons,
yeah.
Politics are dominated by men. What's the point? Does that make it a patriarchal tyranny?
Well, it certainly makes it patriarchal to a certain extent.
Well, and so when women participate in that patriarchal process, is that also a patriarchy? So when we have a healthcare system that's dominated by women, as we do now, is that a patriarchy?
No.
Why not?
I wouldn't call it a patriarchy.
Because it doesn't involve men.
Yeah.
Isn't it the structure that's patriarchal, or is it the gender that makes the difference?
Clearly you think it's the structure?
No, I don't buy the whole patriarchy idea or the tyranny idea. I think it's absolutely appalling. The idea that we have a hierarchical structure in the West is true. The idea that hierarchies tend towards corruption and deception and stultification across time is true. It's certainly the case that we need to be awake and criticize our institutions, but that is not the same thing as calling the West a patriarchal tyranny. And words matter, especially among academics, who should be very, very careful with their words.
I think the main problem with that thought is the why. It's like you see something and you assume something else without really investigating it. Like she said, that it's a patriarchy, it's a tyrannical patriarchy because most of the people in like the highest echelons of power are men. She just assumed it's like tyrannical patriarchy.
That's
why did that happen?
But that's why he said you have to use your words carefully, because you can't say that unless you're saying that across the board. You can't say that unless it's the same on the other side, because if you're not going to say that about women, you can't say that about men. Which is why he said if you're an academic or if you are passionate or interested in these topics, you have to choose your words carefully, because your words mean something. If you're going to say that, and you're going to say that it's like that because of the fact that men are mostly in political leadership roles, then you have to say the same thing about women in the health field. Why is it mostly women in the higher fields of the health field? Why can't there be men in it? And then if you deny the fact that it's not that case for that, then you're denying your whole stance.
I think she assumes that any domain that's like dominated by women is good. But
That's
if
what I'm
dominated by
saying.
men is bad. It's like,
But then you're not going based off the stance. You're going based off gender.
exactly. It's like
So
like basically like female good, men bad. It's like
and it's not
how
the
it
case. When it comes to jobs, yes, I agree jobs should be fairly across the board. But it has to be fairly across the board. Meaning like the person who is best for the role needs to take it. If that person happens to be a woman, great. That person happens to be a man, great. If it's black, Asian, great. Like it has to be based off of who is great for that role, to provide for the society, for the community that we live in, because that is why that role is there.
Equality of opportunity. Give everybody the opportunity to have that position and pick the best person.
You need to, because if you don't, you're crushing your own society, you're crushing your own community.
Exactly.
Because you're putting somebody in there that is not the best for that stance and is not going to do well to strive your community to be better.
Yeah.
And then you're going to complain why we don't have the resources that we need. It's because you didn't put Mark in charge, you put Lisa in charge.
Because
And Mark has 18 degrees that can help that resource, and Lisa has 1, but she's a woman and she has a vagina, so
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
If you're CEO of a company, like you gotta do what's best for the company.
Mm-hmm. Not what's best for society.
Not
what makes society happy, I should
exactly. Like you shouldn't like do quotas, like half women, half men, half female. It's like no, because most of those people are not gonna be qualified for that job. You gotta pick the best person for the job. If you're a CEO of a company, I think you're automatically inclined to do that. But then societal pressure is making you, you know.
And I feel like a lot of people don't realize the impact that certain jobs have. Like from being just a regular worker from McDonald's to a CEO, each company has a stance that helps the community in some way or form, whether it's providing food, providing electricity. So if you don't put the right person for that job to provide that source for your community, in the end, you're only hurting your community.
Exactly. But yeah, guys, we don't want this video to be too long. I think it's probably 40, 50 minutes right now. But
Jordan Peterson just makes us talk a lot. So he always has a lot of good points, and I like how he trips people up. Like they think they got him.
And he's like, nah, son,
you don't got me.
I got you.
Exactly.
But yeah, guys, like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.